Today we're sitting down with John Yellich, the director of the Michigan Geological Survey, to talk about the purpose of the Triage Project, how the project started as well as how it has evolved, and goals for the future of the project. So let's get started.
I'm John Yellich. I'm the director of the Michigan Geological Survey here at Western Michigan University. And I'd like to give you a brief overview of some of the things that we've been doing, and one of them happens to be the Triage Project that MGS, Michigan Geological Survey, initiated back in 2018. In 2018, the state of Michigan was under the surge of PFAS and had people from the state of Michigan contact me about what can we do to help identify where the PFAS is going in certain areas. And with that, in 2018, MGS prepared a proposal and said, we'd like to help you to look at the geology and the groundwater and see the flow directions that you have in areas of concern right now. Some of those first areas happened to be airports because they had used the PFAS foam, the AAA foam, and it was dispersing quite rapidly in some of those areas. And so we prepared a proposal, and that proposal then was then converted into a project. And so we received our first grant to start doing it. And half of the projects that we did were airports that we looked at. What we determined when we were looking at them was that the well locations that we were using to try and identify what the subsurface material was weren't in the right locations. And that's what we talked about right away, is that this report doesn't have the wells that are corrected. Well, what we did was we corrected them to make sure that they were all located where they needed to be. And that's when we determined that there were a lot more wells that we could use, but could we use them to be effective? That's when the discussion then turned to, well, we need to look at well logic. And then we had another meeting with not just MPART, but also with the water division, Eagle Water Division, and said, what can we do about correcting the well logic wells? At the time that we were doing the first ones, we only had 2 people working on the project. And so they helped prepare the maps, helped do the ArcGIS reports, everything else. And I believe that the state, MPART in this case, saw that there was a benefit to the things that we were doing in these focused areas. We were given the opportunity to go ahead and show that we could correct the well logic wells. And so all new people had to go through a training program. It's something that we need to have for our water quality as well as quantity. And we have the water division in the state is a strong supporter of the work that we're doing right now because it helps them in the high capacity well withdrawals. But correcting all this well data also helps us to correct the wells for just the regular homeowner and the things that we're doing. So it crosses the cross section on the water quantity issue. Now we look at quality. We need to have proper locations for this because we need to be able to plot what the geology, quote unquote, lithologies are in the subsurface from the well data. And if it's not in the right section, that's not going to help us very much if we don't have the right location for where it's at. And that's where we're able to show that we could go ahead and put it together that way. So as we proceeded in doing this, and after the training program, we were then presenting to the state, the Water Resource Division, Drinking Water Group, that we had a QA program that they could go ahead and review. And that was important because we wanted to make sure that we're doing quality data. And that program has now expanded to where we have a high quality QA program that we do with all of the employees, whether you started today or you started a year ago. You all have to go through a QA program to make sure that we're getting the proper data put in there correctly. As we go right now, we were able to show that we could go ahead and produce production of the correction of the wells and putting in the scan logs, and the state gave us another tranche of money. So we ended up with around $900,000 that we could go ahead and do this. And so that's really the star for this, is that we have a program for training the people, making sure that on a monthly, if not weekly basis, we know that they're doing the right job, and also on a quarterly basis. And we provide that information to the state as well so they can see what we're doing. So as we progressed here in the last year and a half, 2 years, COVID hit. So we went from the computer lab here where we could only have 6 people sitting in it. But COVID we thought was going to be a deterrent, but it actually became a partial blessing for us because it gave us the ability for people to go ahead and work from their homes. And that meant that we could hire more people, which we did. And we went out and we searched, found people from different parts of the state. We advertised at universities. So that became the real blessing. We went from 10 to 12 people up to a maximum of 30 at one time, if not 32, I think we had. And all of those people had to be properly trained and they had to continue to meet the standards. So we are probably about a third of the way through the project right now. And we just want to continue to perform for the state, because this becomes the ultimate benefit. It's the societal benefit that we have. Looking at the quantity of water, looking at the quality of water, putting data together that's in a valid database that people can use and not have to correct it. Because prior to this, anybody that looked at the well logic wells had to correct them themselves.
Where does Michigan rank in the national investigation into PFAS?
I think hats off to Michigan. They're number one, because they've actually looked at it in greater detail than anybody else. They've looked at sampling all of the, if you will, municipal water supplies, over 1,400 water supplies they sampled, determine which ones that may have it, and that's when they found out some of it up in Parchment and did that. But the secondary thing was they started looking at all the other industries that were using it and finding out where those industries were located, and a lot of them had to do with metal plating and other things where they were using it as a degreaser and everything else. The PFAS went into the water system and went to the water treatment plant, and that became a secondary problem because the water treatment plants didn't know they were getting it. When it was bad, we didn't find out how bad until we found out that we weren't capturing it anywhere, and some of it was going to be captured, if you will, in the waste coming out of the wastewater treatment plants, and then it was put on as sludge, because a lot of that sludge was used to help treat the soils, and we ended up putting PFAS out there. As soon as it rained, it went into the groundwater system. So we, in our program right now, are just helping to put the data together so that we can then start looking at the subsurface geology in greater detail and help support the state so that they know which way the groundwater is flowing.
Given unlimited support, what would be the overall long-term goals of the Triage project?
Long-term goals is to try and capture and, if you will, correct about 560,000 logs in WellLogic itself. We have an estimated 700,000 scan logs that are in the system to get those input to make sure that we've got the right data into the database. And then on an ongoing basis, to work with the state and making sure that all the future data that's input is done correctly. And so that's what we hope to do.
Why is it important to preserve the historical data when most wells are not active after a period of 30 years or so?
What we found is that a lot of the data on the old historic logs was perhaps more detailed than the new drillers do. Can't tell you why, but that's what we found out. And so we want to make sure that whatever data that we have, it's input by somebody, and that would be us. We want to make sure that anybody else that wanted to verify what it is, that they could go ahead and do it.
Who works on the Triage project?
Well, what we look at is that their ability to work with data management, and that means keystrokes and other things in what they're doing. But the other thing is being able to at least look at forms and other data to make sure that they're focused and they can go ahead and make the changes. That's the training program that we have.
What kind of opportunities come with being a part of this project?
What we're trying to do is that because we have the ability to work on special projects, they call it the site triage project, where it's a 2-mile radius. We're trying to at least take people who have ArcGIS skills and other things and data to go ahead and assist us in putting these together. And that's a secondary improvement that we've done to the program, is that some of the people that have these skills, we're using them, and they help us to put together the little reports that we're putting for the state. And so that becomes a win-win, that we are training people to use the data and also to put it on their resume, that they say that we have ArcGIS, and it's one of the things that I've been a champion of since I've been here 8 years. There's so much information you can get out there for the common person to understand, and that's not a negative. It's just so that we can put it on phones and other things and do it. The students, the staff, have a place in employment because they have skills that other people may not have, because they've learned how to take data and put it into formats that can be used that they would use in a consulting job or anywhere else.
You stated earlier that the project has been active since 2018. How has it been demonstrated that it has been effective so far?
The real benefit that we have is that I submit a quarterly report to the State Water Division, and in that quarterly report we provide information. But the secondary real positive benefit is that the project manager of this project submits data to the state so that they can review it and also confirm that the work that we're doing meets the expectations that they have. And to this point, we've had nothing but pluses in what we're doing.
What types of GIS applications are you seeing in this project, and what do you anticipate moving forward?
using the ArcGIS skills, particularly when we get these requests from the state to go ahead and look at one of these 2-mile radius projects, is that we want to look at not just what the surface features are, and that would be hillshade and other things in LiDAR, but also looking at the groundwater surface and making sure that we have an understanding of that. And then also having the ability to put together significant cross sections that can go ahead and tell us what the story is about which way it's flowing and what the formation types are in the subsurface, and if we have the ability to go ahead and identify where the bedrock contact is, so that we know how far the water is flowing vertically into the system.
How else does validating this data help in addressing other groundwater concerns?
The ones that I have to really talk about is the high capacity well program, which is people that could potentially impact the surface water streams from the high capacity irrigation wells or high capacity use wells. And what we were able to do is at least put the proper location for the geology and the subsurface material into the water withdrawal assessment tool information. And that allows them to do a better job of assessing whether or not the pumping of the wells is going to impact the surface water streams. And this is one of the things that we do have a letter of endorsement from the Water Division on that right now.
Thanks, John, for this great overview of the project. The Triage Project has gone through a lot of change since its inception in 2018. We hope to continue to grow and adapt in order to support the state of Michigan in its efforts addressing PFAS. Thanks for watching. Please let us know what other content you'd like to see in the comments. And don't forget to rock that subscribe button.